Good morning. Welcome, period one. First period of the last day of Writers Week 30. Woo! It's been an incredible week. I am honored and nervous and excited to introduce this period. You are in for a treat. But before we get started, we have some important thank yous for some incredible, amazing people. Thank you to the English department, the entire English department, especially Mr. Anderson and Mrs. Enck, for putting together this Writers Week. Yes, all of their tireless efforts, along with everyone else in the English department for their background, all of the behind-the-scenes work that had to take place for this amazing project to come together. Thank you to Tech Crew for their amazing work behind the scenes and making everything bright and cheery here on stage. Yes. Thank you to Viking Boosters. Students, please go home and thank your parents, because without their support each and every year, this would not be possible. So thank you, Viking Boosters. And thank you, students. Most importantly, thank you, students, for being the very best audience that you are. Thank you for your amazing encouragement, support, and engagement. We thank you so much. Thank you for being here and being you. This is an amazing week. This week would not be possible if it were not for the two gentlemen standing behind me. They are retired English teachers, Mr. Gary Anderson and Mr. Tony Romano, and they are the founders who came up with the idea for Writers Week 30 years ago in 1995. It's amazing. And they started in 1995, and it's been running every year since, and history has been made. They have some amazing accomplishments that they've achieved both during Friends and since retirement. Dare I say they've been more active, even if it's possible, since retirement, and so it warrants recognizing what they do. They too are both published authors. Tony Romano was a teacher here for 30 years at Friend High School, teaching both English and AP psychology. So he was in the social studies department. He's authored three best-selling novels. When the World Was Young, If You Eat, You Never Die, and Where My Body Ends and the World Begins. And he was named Illinois Author of the Year in 2010. Since his retirement, Tony continues to write. He writes and performs music, which he's going to share with us today. He also serves as an adjunct writing professor at Harper College. Give it up for Tony Romano. Gary Anderson taught high school English in both Iowa and Texas before coming here for 27 years teaching English in our department at Friend High School. He also served as English department chair for quite several of those years. And Mr. Anderson's presence online with his blog, What's Not Wrong, which I have consistently followed, his strong presence on social media with educators nationwide, and his service with numerous national teaching associations has earned him recognition way beyond these friend walls, but he has definitely impacted educators nationwide. Since his retirement, Mr. Anderson also serves as an adjunct professor, teaching writing at Harper. He supervises student teachers at Illinois State University, and this past fall, Mr. Anderson was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from Illinois Association of Teachers of English for many of his contributions. So let's give it up for Mr. Gary Anderson. And I am personally honored to introduce both Mr. Anderson and Ms. Romano today. Gary has been a mentor to me for many, many years, almost my entire teaching career. He's one of the main reasons that I wanted to teach here, because of his impact on teaching, his impact with Writers Week, and I cannot wait to witness both of them inspiring you today. So let's please give another round of applause for Gary Anderson.
Wow, I kind of forgot about some of that stuff. I would just like to start by dedicating whatever I say here for the next few minutes to the memory of my colleagues, departed Mr. Jim Wyman, Ms. Sue Gunther, Ms. Carrie Calder, and Dr. Anthony Minetti. I want to start by telling just a little bit about the beginning of Writers Week. It's kind of a dim memory for us, so I can't imagine But Writers Week started in 1995. We were in this boring meeting. You know what the meeting was about? The meeting was about nothing. And so we were in this meeting, and then we were supposed to break into little groups and talk about what we were supposed to be excited about. And we immediately turned to, what if we did something that really mattered? And then the what ifs kept coming. What if we put the spotlight on student writers? Every school has student writers. Every school has student writers. But some of them are just kind of off and doing it almost in secret. We said, what if we put the spotlight on those people? What if the writers in the faculty shared their writing with other people? What if we shared it with each other and with students? And what if we went out and found the quote-unquote real writers out in the world and brought them in here and connected them with our school community, with our students? And so we did it. You know, Ms. Christensen said it was an idea. That's the idea part of it, right? And then you have to make it happen. And so we did. We didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't call it Writers Week 1, that's for sure. We didn't know there would be a Writers Week 2, let alone a 30. And so it started on lunch hours only. I saw the program last night, you know, that little piece of it that I saw. It was kind of cute. The program was lunch hours only. It was a handful of students, a few faculty members, and some writers from the community. Now, the guy who basically invented science fiction, pulp science fiction, was a fellow named Frederick Hole. And he lived one block over on Hunting Ridge. And Tony talked to him, and this grand master of science fiction, this picture's on the wall out there, I think it's the second one over if I remember right. He came here as long as we wouldn't tell anybody how little we were paying him. And he came and was, of course, wonderful. And as soon as Writers Week started, we saw the potential. We saw what was happening. We saw students paying attention to each other. We saw people saying what mattered to them and their stories, and other people were connecting to it. It was like, oh, wait a minute, we're onto something here. This isn't what usually happens in schools. It usually works the communication usually flows the other way. And so we did it again, and again, and again, and again. It doesn't happen too much, you know, without certain things. It has to have people who organize Writers Week work really, really hard. We get a lot of credit for it, but everybody works really, really hard on this. And so the faculty, who's completely voluntary, you know, works really hard to make this happen. That's one thing that you need. You also need support from administrators. It takes courage to say, we're going to put a lot of stuff on pause and go in the auditorium for a week and listen to writers. But if I'm counting right, over the 30 years, there have been 5 friend principals, I think 6 English department chairs, and I think 6 superintendents. And any one of them could have said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. But every one of those folks not only let it happen, but they've also, the vast majority of them have been Writers Week presenters too. So I think that's a good thing. We also need, and I hate to talk about this, but Writers Week needs a little money. And so the boosters, after students went home and kind of talked about being excited about what they saw at school, the boosters kicked in, and parent support has been really, really important too. But the most important part of it is the students who share up here. And I always say, you know, the most important part about Writers Week doesn't happen up here, it happens out there. It's, you know, whatever you guys get out of this, that's the important product of it. And so the fact that this student body has people who will come in, listen, do something with it, and appreciate it, is also, I think, critically important. So, enough blah, blah, blah about that. But let me tell you about some of my favorite things that have happened here. I think I'll tell you maybe 4 things if I've got time for this. One of them is Gwendolyn Brooks. I don't know if you know the name Gwendolyn Brooks, but Gwendolyn Brooks is one of the most important American poets, writers ever. She lived on the south side of Chicago, and she agreed to come here for far less than she was certainly worth and probably could have gotten anywhere else. But she came here. She had a certain voice, a certain resonance, a certain charisma. I thought, the paint was going to come off the walls in this room, but she was so electrifying. Her poem, We Real Cool, is pretty much a standard greatest hits American poem, and I didn't really understand it until she stood right there and did it. And then I was like, oh, okay, now I understand this poem. But the cool thing was we did a reception for her, and it was in the what was then the teacher's lounge, it's now the preschool lab, and we had like some cake and some lunch, and she was there. And when she was in here, she read from her collected poems, a big thick book entitled Blacks, and then she was dressed in this purple floral dress and had a little like beanie cap that she wore, and she just charmed everyone. So there's a line of people to come in and talk to her, maybe get her autograph or say hi or ask her a question. And at that time, Fremd was not a very diverse school, so here was this prominent black American author, one of the most important black authors, the most important authors of all American history, and this long line of white people to talk to her. And there came a point in the line where these two freshman black girls came up to her. And Miss Brooks said, why don't you sit here by me? And she pulled up a chair, and those girls sat there on either side of her. It was like, okay, well, now here's the queen and here's the princesses. This is kind of perfect. And as people came through, if they said, I want to be a writer, or I would like to write poems too, she would reach in her little satchel and pull out a book, autograph it, hand it to the student and say, good luck. And she did that. She went through a whole suitcase full of free books. But toward the end, there was a young man who stepped, she was out of books. A young man stepped up and he said the magic words, I want to be a writer too. And she looked at him. She took her personal copy of her collected works. It was dog-eared and had her notes in it. She asked him his name. I can't remember what it was, but she described it to him and handed it to him and said, I hope this means something to you someday. And so that's the kind of person she was, and helped connect to the community here. Another guy I'd like to tell you about is Mark Smith. Mark Smith is a wild man. Poetry slam is kind of in American culture now, but he invented it. He invented it. And one thing that helped Writers Week a lot was the fact that a couple of our faculty members, Henry Sampson and Maria Mungai, were very connected to the Poetry Slam movement in Chicago. We were great friends with Mark Smith. And so they had Mark Smith come here. And a couple of things that were pretty memorable about Mark Smith. One is he was not a young man, but he hopped up on these banisters. And while he was delivering a poem, he walked up those banisters, didn't he? We were like, crap, I think he was going to fall off of there, but he did not. And then he did it. He came back and he kept walking up the banisters. And the other thing is while Gwendolyn Brooks was our first standing ovation, Mark Smith was our first F-bomb. And so we got to have some meetings about that and have interesting conversations about the balance between school appropriateness and artistic expression, and can they live in the same room at the same time. And it was a healthy discussion. And thanks, Mark, for that. And I'll tell you quickly about Billy Collins. Billy Collins was Poet Laureate of the United States a couple of different times, which is the highest honor that a poet can have. And he came here. He was, of course, wonderful in the auditorium here. But my favorite little moment is a personal moment. He was in the hospitality room afterward, just waiting to go back to the airport or whatever. And I went in there with my 4-year-old daughter, because I wanted her to meet Billy Collins. And he was in there, he was writing in his journal. And when we came in with 4-year-old Abby, he said hi and greeted her, and he had his notebook and his pen, and he handed it to her. And he said, would you draw an animal for me? And so, 4-year-old Abby, she didn't care about poet laureate in the United States. She takes the pen, the notebook, draws, and she says, this is a dinosaur. A dinosaur is an animal. And hands it back to her. pretty hard to disagree with that, so Billy said, thank you. And he drew something, and he handed the notebook to her and said, that's a cat. Is that good? And she said, no. And so, I love to think about this. The collected papers and journals of Billy Collins someday are going to be in some prestigious university. That's what happens to those people's stuff. And somewhere in that collection, there is a notebook from Billy Collins. And in there is my daughter's drawing of a dinosaur, about 4 years old, and Billy Collins' needlessly criticized drawing of a cat. The last thing to tell you about that I think moves Writers Week forward in unexpected ways is Fanboys. If you're going to see Fanboys for the first time today, I wish I could be in your mind. Fanboys the first year was a video. It was a video about this fake rock band. There was no live performance. It was this video about this famous rock band that decided to become English teachers instead. And they all ended up back here at this school. And then they decided to get the band back together. And the first year of the video, they said, we'll see you next year. And then the next year it came, and it happened. They were accomplished musicians. They were funny. They were appealing on stage. And the reason why I think it's so important is we had students cheering for their teachers. Now that doesn't happen everywhere, but it happened here, and it's happened every year over and over and over. So Fanboys, I think, is inspiring in a unique way and a completely memorable way. And if this is your 4th or 8th time, whatever, seeing Fanboys, that's great. But like I said, you're in for a treat if you can get back in here to see them a little later today. When it comes down to it, I think Writers Week is about community. It's about community. It's about people sharing what's important to them with each other. And that doesn't happen in a lot of schools. So I'm very, very happy that this school keeps it going. Nothing in education lasts for 30 years. But this has lasted. And I hope it lasts for another 30 years. And I'm so glad that you were all able to be a part of it. Once, twice, 3 times, maybe 4 times. Or in the case of some people, even more than that. So enjoy this day. I hope you've enjoyed the week. And Tony Romano is going to come up here in just a second. He's the only person who has been a presenter at every Writers Week. I missed the first one, appendicitis. He's been at all of them. Tony Romano.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Thanks for bringing back all those memories. That was incredible. One of the best parts about planning Writers Week was just working with this guy for so many years. They said founding fathers, that just means we're old. Every time I walk into this building, I'm filled with gratitude, just because of this, because of the friends I've made, some lifelong friends, and just great to be here. Mrs. Zank, Mr. Anderson, thanks for carrying this along so sophisticatedly and so well. Appreciate that. Does this ever happen in class where someone says something so random that everybody stops and looks at the person and says, "What?" And we say, "How did we get here?" And so we trace it back. Well, she said this, and then before that she said this, and I love doing that. So as I was thinking about today, I was thinking about why I'm here. A few years ago, I would have been shocked if you were to tell me I was going to come up here and share some songs. And I traced it back, and I think it started with my dad whistling. He would whistle all day. He was a really good whistler. And then when I was a kid, I had a transistor radio. Everybody listened to the same 2 stations. It was the size of about a big, fat paperback. And then I started collecting albums, and I bought my first album, which was a Monkees record. And I didn't even have a record player. And then the following year, I bought this portable record player with 4D batteries, and we used to play it in the neighborhood. Then in freshman year, I started playing trumpet in high school. I remember, back to collecting albums, I remember freshman year with my 10-speed bike, going to the record store and coming home with an album on my handlebars. I remember this, especially an Elton John album that piece of love. And then I started, and then in college, I started playing in a garage band, as we called it then. It was really more of a basement band. And we were not very good. We did really good covers, and we had maybe 20 gigs, and that was it. Then I started teaching here, and I had nothing to do with music other than listening to it and envying the students with all this musical ability. And I don't know why I didn't pick up a guitar back then, but then I retired, and then I finally picked up a guitar. And then about 5 years after that, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, I started writing songs, and I'm not sure why, and I just can't stop them. So I'm going to invite my good friend Sabra. Is she here?
Yes, dear.
Another good part of this is sharing the time with Sabra. Deep inside the cupboard, beneath our grandma's platter, one day at last we found her past. We sat down and read every letter, signed yours forever, sent from fields of war, Marine Corps. First class, his name Daniel O'Connor. They planned a life together, 4 kids, a house to hold. Their dreams must have seemed so real. Dear sweet Rosalie, please don't worry about me. I'll find my way home. He'd be home in September, his favorite kind of weather. He couldn't wait to rake the leaves and hold her hand. We held that last letter, dated late December. We knew how this story would end. Must have seemed so close. The paper creased and brittle, the edges torn a little from years of reading his last words. Forever yours, dear sweet Rosalie. Please don't worry about me. I'll find my way home. Dear sweet Rosalie, my sweet dear Rosalie, please don't worry about me. I'll make my way.
Shout out to my first ever class over here.
That would have been weird. Might have been really destroyed. I think this week you're honoring a be like the side B of that song. It's more of another kind of a narrative song. And I like the songs that have stories and that go somewhere, and there's a road and there's some destination. And I'm not sure why I always enjoy those songs. Packed up the car and I aimed to get lost. Stayed off the interstate, drove through the dust. Though every small town called out to me, I'd never belong, that was too plain to see. Met a young doctor who still made house calls. She never treated anyone but from Glen Falls. Her father before her, he did the same. Everyone greeted him by his first name. She lived with a man who had built his guitar. He was born in Glen Falls and had never gone far. He sang me a song about his love of place, the valleys, the rivers, the whole human race. Every soul sang to me. They didn't care that I was lost. Every soul was kind to me. They opened doors and I crossed. Met an old man, lived on Merino Hill. Had 13 kids, hope he's living there still. He found out he had a short time to live, and so much more that he wanted to give. How would he spend his time when he go away? What he wanted most was an ordinary day. Out in the field with his many grandkids, on top of that hill, that's how he lived. Every soul was kind to me. They didn't care that I was lost. Every soul was kind to me. They opened doors and I crossed. Tank full of gas and the sun behind me. Flipped up the visor, now I could see. It already wrecked about 2,000 miles. It hadn't unwritten, unclear all the while. At the crossroad, don't know which way to go. When it's time to slow down, I guess that I'll know. Does it much better if I turn left or right? I learned to be grateful for the first morning light. Every soul kind to me. They didn't care that I was lost. Every soul was kind to me. Yeah, they opened doors.
You're a little boy. Tony sent me this song when my kid was a little boy. And, oh man, I'll cry right now, so that I won't cry after. And Tony and I have over the years talked about this idea of, and I don't remember if there's a term, nostalgia, but when you're in the moment, like when you're feeling this sense that like this is going to go away. And so the first time you sent this was one of your early songs. And I remember thinking, well, one day my kid will be in high school and he will go to college, but it didn't seem like a real thing that would actually happen. Now I have a kid in high school and too real, but your songs are so beautiful and they hit differently, right? Like a book or a poem that we read, right? With every stage of my life, I hear, find, discover, and appreciate something new that you've put into the world. So thank you.
It's really nice to hear. I'm not really good at talking about my songs, so it's not worth A boy is born in June. You hold him tight and hum a tune that you did not know was there, buried deep now in the air between you. You'll never let him go. He looks at you as if you own his whole world. Soon your boy runs free. You keep him close. He skins his knee. The battle's big and small. When to catch and when to let him fall. You'll never let him go. He looks at you as if he knows this new world. You send him off to school. He folds his hands, obeys the rules, but his job is to play and not to sit inside the whole day. So hard to let him go. He looks at you as if he knows this big world. With each passing day, you know he can't stay. Your little boy. Your son is now a teen. 1 hour he's fine, and then he's mean. What happened to that boy? The one who grinned and filled you with such joy. You still can't let him go. So he looks through you as if he owns the whole world. College comes too soon. You think about that ancient tune, back when you held him tight, when a love so pure blossomed at first sight. It's time to let him go. He looks at you and pulls you in and vows to call, as if he finally knows
for Tony. Tony had a student here the other day. Well, I'll fill the time while he hydrates. Tony had a student here, if you saw Tamar Alexian, who told a story about Tony as a teacher. He used to teach AP Psych along with English, and shared that she would leave class and it would be so much fun. And they would just be playing all these games that she would go home and think that, like, now she had to learn all the things. And then would get home, open the textbook, and realize, like, he taught everything. He just made it so fun. And that's Tony.
Now I see what I chose not to see. It greets me like a friend, haven't seen in a long time. Please forget what I said. It led us through rough seas, keeps me pacing all night. For so long, I was wrong. Built a wall of my own. We project flaws we know best. Build a wall so high, no one to penetrate it. You have seen worse of me, got no place to hide. I stand before you humble. For so long, I was wrong. Built a wall of my own. What we see, what we choose not to see. Now I see what I chose not to see. Now I see, yeah, I see. Now I see, yeah, I finally see. Don't you see that I see? Don't you see that I finally see? Now I see, yeah, I see. Now I see, yeah, I finally see.